Welcome back to Seiso Side Up podcast. This is part two of our conversation on how GRC teams are evolving from traditional compliance functions into strategic leaders within the organization. In the last episode, we talked about how automation and changing expectations are reshaping the day-to-day work of GRC. Today, we're going deeper into the skills modern GRC professionals need, how teams are stepping into true advisory roles, and the growing pains that come with that shift. I'm your host, Lauren Schaefer, and I'm joined by CISO COO Eric Lansbury, co-host Heidi Patrick, and CISO Security Lead Engineer Emily Smith, who specializes in continuous compliance and risk management. If you're thinking about where GRC is headed and how to stay relevant in this new landscape, this conversation is for you. Let's talk skills, because the modern GRC role looks very different from the classic audit-only mindset. What skills are becoming non-negotiable for GRC professionals today?
Yeah. So technical understanding is definitely one of the skill sets that is becoming very prominent in GRC. And traditionally it wasn't. Last episode, we talked more about GRC previously being a lot of policies and audits. And today that's not really the case. So knowing at least the high level definitions and purposes for things like cloud security options, how to apply those controls and how to validate them is really what you're looking for when I'm talking about technical understanding. Not expecting every GRC person to know how to deploy everything in AWS using Terraform, but at least be able to view and validate some of the things that are in there so you know what controls are being applied effectively. Also, risk management, risk identification, risk mitigation, corrective action planning, and clear remediation planning. If you spend any time in ISO, this is very heavy in ISO and NIST-based frameworks, thinking of everything in terms of how do we manage and mitigate the risk versus just black and white, turn it on, turn it off sort of ideals. So risk management, technical understanding, those two things together, I think, are really non-negotiables for GRC professionals today.
Hey,
I think
Emily.
I can talk about that a little bit too. I think it's not, it's a little bit beyond technical understanding in a way. It's more like technical fluency to me. So it's not necessarily like hands on. We don't need the hands on engineering aspect of everything. Even though there are some cases where we've had to provide that advisory for that sort of thing. But overall, for like GRC professionals, we need to understand how the cloud controls, identity management, logging, how those things actually function. And then, taking that and understanding how governance, operations, and technology all interconnect. And then taking that and moving it into like risk articulation. So it's kind of that I would say those are the three main things, technical fluency, um, how things interconnect, and how to articulate that into risks.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes along with the continuous learning of it too. So, regulatory requirements, technologies, threat landscapes, those are always constantly evolving and we have to quickly adapt. And then we also have to understand the business context to align controls and policies and recommendations with the organization's objectives. So, I think all of that is pretty crucial for GRC professionals.
Sounds like a well-rounded approach. How important are data analytics and risk visualization in your work?
Yeah, I can kick this one off too. So my work in particular in spanning into more of the GRC and security aspect and the technology aspect, data analytics and visualization of anything that I can find so I can correlate that information together and make a good determination, if you will, on what the risk posture is super important. At the GRC level too, data analytics really come in many, many forms. So it's not always a dashboard or a single piece of data. On top of Excel spreadsheets, dashboards, I think, is also another word that may be used a little too much in security. It's not always accurate. Some of the data behind it is not really fed properly. And ultimately, you make bad decisions if your dashboard is not perfect. So, on top of that, is really just you need to tie to continuous compliance, continuous monitoring, and the continuous ability to feed data into those analytics engines to make good decisions, or at least inform decisions. But more importantly, the ability to correlate the data, like I said, and stitch together findings to turn it into a risk profile that you can make a better determination on what the threat landscape is more important to me than just having the analytics themselves. So I always look to try and find each of those pieces and put them together, then take a step back and look at the whole picture, figure out what the actual risk profile is for that piece of technology or the system or the organization that is operating in that way. So
Yeah, I agree with Eric on that. It's really important for decision makers. When you have executives and senior leaderships in a room, they are really just looking for clear, actionable insights rather than looking at raw data or things that they might not understand from because it's too technical. So you really need to put it in business terms and quickly understand so that they can quickly understand where the greatest risk lie, and then our team can also identify any emerging trends or what areas seem to be the most high risk or most common risk areas.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. They just covered everything. But I think the real skill that Eric hit on is that correlation, turning all this data into a meaningful risk narrative, and then moving that on to what Emily said, providing those executives and leadership that clarity. They don't want to look at statuses of 200 controls, so they want that meaningful risk narrative.
Perfect. The next question I have is AI governance is becoming a hot topic. How are you seeing that show up in GRC responsibilities? Are these skills being hired for or developed internally? What skills do you think GRC professionals must start learning now to stay relevant? Who wants to lead off on this one?
I'll definitely lead off on this one. See the blog that I just wrote. No, I'm kidding.
We'll link it.
Yeah, definitely. We'll link into the show notes blog that I wrote strictly around this from an AI governance perspective. And when we talk about AI governance becoming a real hot topic, it's been a hot topic for a little while. It's just getting a lot more attention recently because there are way more options in managing the risk when it comes to AI and how it's being incorporated in your environment. So a lot of these are still evolving. There are definite risk management frameworks that you can use, and GRC teams need to be able to at least understand how it integrates within their current program. And a good example I can give is like ISO 42001 is a good add-on to 27001 management system for AI risk management and the governance of the use of AI. It won't get too technical in that aspect. It'll still give you kind of the the ISO flavor of management system, and you want to dive a little bit deeper into technical ones like the OWASP.10, for example. All these things still apply to AI governance, and it's just an important aspect for GRC teams to start really diving in and understanding. But remember, one thing is that we're not reinventing a wheel. We're really just taking common approaches from the past and things that have worked for many, many years and translating that into how AI is incorporated into applications and products, and or just the use of everyday generative AI solutions like Copilot, ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's becoming a new core responsibility in GRC. I mean, AI, like Eric said, it introduces a whole new category of risks that need to be governed, and organizations need policies to ensure AI is used responsibly while also identifying and managing any risk it introduces. And not only that, but they need to ensure compliance with laws and regulations, particularly those related to data protection and privacy. So it's definitely showing up more, and it's only going to evolve further. As for whether these skills are hired for or developed internally, I would say it's a combination of both. You definitely need a foundational understanding of GRC, particularly around the risk and controls, but there are so many frameworks out there and new ones every day. Like Eric said, the ISO AI one, you can't be a subject matter expert in all of them. So definitely just having the foundational knowledge of controls, but also improving that knowledge and skills on the job as well as these new things come out.
Yeah, nobody has 10 plus years of experience implementing ISO 42001 yet. So a lot of the skills internally are good for training teams to to curate and develop internally for those GRC groups. But I also say that it's not just GRC that needs to be involved there. It's privacy, it's legal, it's any group that can provide insight, like on the software development side, as to how things are being implemented and then managing the controls in that way. Like I said before, it's not super technical. All of them are not super technical, but there are principles of transparency that go into developing AI. And those things really are starting to come to fruition and become way more popular to talk about these days, not just in GRC.
Much appreciated. This all points to a bigger shift from compliance operator to strategic partner. What does it actually look like when a GRC is a strategic partner? Emily, you going to go first?
Sure. Yeah, this kind of takes me back to the last episode, the part 1 of this that we recorded, and it really goes beyond simply passing audits and ticking compliance boxes. It's the focus really shifts to risk-based decision making and ensuring that those decisions align with the organization's strategic goal.
Yeah, I think I can add on to that too. Like being a strategic partner is more being involved in the planning stages. Emily and I and Eric were part of a partnership that, we evaluated certain vendors. So, being involved in that planning stage is kind of helping influence type of selections before, and like shaping policy before it's the regulation forces it, things like that. So it's more in that planning aspect, being a strategic partner.
Anything to add, Eric?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll tie into Heidi started this in the first episode, and I'll just tie into that strategic partnership aspect a little bit more. Is not just within your own department, but other departments, working and integrating with them and really understanding what things slow them down. A thing that we talk about a lot is we want to make sure GRC compliance and security is not slowing down things like the sales process. But the only way we can do that effectively and show the right confidence to potential customers is by working together and laying out what capabilities and security controls and privacy management and aspects of technical security to provide that confidence to the customer. We work together with the sales teams to be able to do that. And on a day-to-day basis, we may be having conversations with our customers or even our own partners in the industry about how we can keep security and compliance from slowing things down, making it not as confusing as it has over the last 20, 25, even 30 years. And putting security at the forefront is really working on that strategic partnership. Sales cannot be slowed down, especially for companies that need to sell their products. I mean, that's what it all comes back to, right?
And as a follow-up to that, how do you balance being a trusted advisor while still enforcing the controls? Where do you see GRC influencing business decisions earlier than before?
I think I talked about this a little bit on the first episode of this series here. For GRC, we have moved a lot into that advisory role, and I think one of the biggest things with that is the transparency. Like we need to make sure the expectations and risk thresholds are clearly defined. Like if we're giving that transparency, then everything will feel more aligned, and then staying consistent in that as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I try to do is view the controls as safeguards rather than obstacles, and try to reiterate that to our customers. It's important to translate the risk into clear business terms that would drive this decision and help our customers and grasp the real impact and answer the question, why does this matter? And then doing that will help build trust with these decision makers. As far as where does GRC influence business decisions earlier than before, I would definitely say, when entering a new market or geography, regulations are growing and they vary depending on the type of business and where it operates. Even within the US, we're seeing that that requirements can differ by state. for example, doing business in California introduces additional compliance obligations under CCPA, and other states are beginning to adopt similar privacy laws. So I think that we're definitely going to see GRC influencing some of those decisions earlier than before.
Yeah, and actually, we'll tie this into CMMC a little bit more. Is we've had a few conversations from like a governance, risk, and compliance aspect with customers who were even deciding if they wanted to or needed to do CMMC. I had one conversation with a service provider that they had a couple customers that maybe needed CMMC. Some of the requirements were even in some of the contracts, but in the end, after we went through a discussion of what it would take, how much they would have to invest in the planning and all the controls that they would have to apply, they actually decided that they were going to move on from that market altogether. So when we talk about these business decisions, they could be literal revenue streams that either are not fully serving the company and they can decide to let them go, or really push hard on things like CMMC and get them in compliance because they would lose a large portion of the revenue. The earlier you have that conversation, the better, because obviously technology and security controls take time sometimes.
Mhm.
Depends on your landscape, depends on how much you know about that specific certification or requirement. And then you can make a better informed decision at that point as to how you want to proceed with these types of projects and certifications.
That's extremely insightful. How does leadership benefit when GRC is involved earlier in planning or transformation initiatives?
So I read this question. I think we already answered it.
Okay. Well, then,
Yeah.
as a follow up, what mistakes do organizations make that prevent GRC from stepping into the role?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is thinking that security is the hindrance. And that's kind of at the fault of our own industry and pushing security controls much harder than it needs to be. Technical people, and myself included, we may get into the mindset of, well, this is how you do it. This is the way that it works, and you need to just put that control in place. But under a good ISMS, it needs to be managed a little bit better. What risk are we actually mitigating? So what happens is a lot of times we forget that GRC, along with all other departments and teams, really need to work together, not against each other. Right? And somewhere within the organization are the crown jewels, as we all say in security. That could be data, it could be software, intellectual property, resources. No matter what they are, the organization exists because of them and not solely based on complying with regulations or deploying firewalls and security frameworks. It's really about working as a team to deliver the best services the organization can to its customers. Another mistake GRC often makes in most organizations is kind of the lack of attention to technical details to a degree. And we talked about that a little bit earlier, because we need to be able to map technical implementation to compliance needs. A lot of questions, we get on a regular basis is, well, this control in ISO language, or albeit high trust language or CMMC language, what does that mean when I'm actually deploying it in the AWS environment? And it's not really the job of the GRC team to know exactly what steps to complete every single time, but at least guide and translate. We do this quite a bit with things like the CMMC and the high trust controls are sometimes a little cryptic in nature. And so we have to take those translations and turn them into what would really need to be implemented to fill the gaps and directly work with the implementation teams. Biggest issue I've ever seen with all GRC teams, or not all GRC teams, but some that I've worked with in the past, is here's the control language, go implement it. Mm-hmm. You cannot do that. That is 100% wrong. And that's often why GRC and information security gets a bad rap, because we want it to just be as black and white as you go figure it out and tell me when it's done. That's not how we do things.
Great segue to our challenges and growing pains section. So, Emily, question for you. What are the biggest challenges teams face as the rules expand? Is there resistance from within GRC or from the business?
Oh boy, I would say just staying current through continuous learning and upskilling. As I've been saying, like regulations and technologies are constantly evolving. So what's relevant today may be replaced by a new tool or regulation tomorrow. So it's definitely just staying on top of that is definitely the most challenging. Is there resistance? Absolutely. Every day. sometimes GRC is perceived as just another hurdle to clear. And we often hear, well, this has never happened before, so why should we worry about it now? From our perspective, just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't. However, that explanation isn't always enough. So, a more effective approach is to translate those technical risk into tangible business impacts, showing how would this affect the organization if it did happen. And that approach seems to help convey the real impact of the risk.
Thank you. Heidi, what about from a team lead perspective? What are the biggest challenges you face?
Yeah, no, Emily has covered it. I think sometimes, and Eric kind of covered it too, as GRC professionals, we do get comfortable being like checklist managers sometimes, but we have to push ourselves into that uncomfortableness and work on those communication skills and like business and like Emily was saying, how do these controls affect the business? We need to be aware of our customers' business needs in general as well, and also have that technical literacy. So I think that could be challenging to push people to our GRC professionals to be in that uncomfortable kind of state for a little bit, but in the end, they become better professionals for it. So, and then with the resistance, I think, Emily hit that on the head with that one. A lot of people would look at GRC as blockers. So, it takes time to build trust. So, like I had said before, having that transparency early on and building that strategic partnership early on helps build that trust.
Eric, anything to add?
You can skip me on this one.
Okay.
Mark it.
How do you prevent burnout when expectations increase but headcount doesn't? Heidi, as our team lead with 2 people under you, what is your answer for that?
I think prioritization. Not every framework needs equal attention. Not every task needs equal attention. Not every risk needs immediate remediation. So just planning and prioritizing, I think helps prevent burnout. I also like summer Fridays, so.
And no spreadsheets.
Wait, no, I think we should ask everybody this question. Emily, how do you prevent burnout working in GRC?
Well, I mean, Heidi said it, like work will always be there. So learning to prioritize is key. And you definitely just need to focus on the highest risk and the most critical task at the moment. And also just make sure to take regular breaks and carve out time for yourself. Delegate tasks where you can, leverage automation, set aside blocks of uninterrupted time on your calendar to focus without responding to, messages and emails, because that's where I feel like a lot of time the burnout can come when you're trying to work on a task that takes an hour, but it ends up taking 2 hours because you also have to respond to the million messages and emails. So, kind of to avoid that, put that uninterrupted time on your calendar and, take breaks when they're needed.
Eric, I know you're big on that. Anything else from you about how to prevent burnout?
I think all of those were pretty good tips. I mean, I think ultimately we tie it back to like a GRC team conversation is everybody's throwing 100 things at you, 100 miles an hour from 60 different directions, no matter what. Whereas it used to be more of we plan our audit, we collect evidence, we check our compliance, we build our policies. With continuous compliance and automation actually expands those number of touch points in a way because there's more to rely on centrally. So it's not that automation and continuous compliance will create burnout. It's that, like Heidi said and Emily said, you need to focus on priority items. You need to focus on what's going to move the needle the most within the shortest amount of time, but also protecting your own time to be able to analyze and correlate information and determine and define risk well. Because if you rush through it, it's just, wow, we got this thing, I just found it. Now everybody drops everything to go fix it. That's not how organizations and businesses work. There's a lot of things happening all at once. And not everybody has all the extra capacity to just drop everything to to fix something unless it is the top priority in protecting the systems.
Thank you. We're going to move into the lightning round now. So one question for each person. Eric is going to lead off. Eric, what skills should every GRC professional prioritize in the next year?
Well, you should prioritize it this year. Don't wait till next year. Anything cloud hosting and AI technology, just prioritize learning, figuring it out. There are, like I said, a bunch of frameworks and things that you can use to manage the risk of it, bring it into your program effectively. But I would just say anything cloud hosting, security, and AI, start prioritizing that as a GRC person.
Thank you. Emily, one mindset shift that matters most for modern GRC teams.
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to what we talked about a few times now, is taking a risk-based approach rather than focusing solely on compliance or audit readiness, because this transforms GRC from that reactive function into more of a proactive driver of informed decision making.
Thank you. And last but not least, Heidi, one thing leaders can do to better support evolving GRC roles.
I think leaders can invite our GRC professionals into that strategic conversation early, not just when things go wrong. This was a lightning round, so that's my lightning answer.
We'll make a whole new podcast on that. All right, so one more lightning round. This is going to be a little bit of a personal edition, so everybody can answer each one. Just one word answer, though. Eric.
Wait, at the same time? All three of us at the same time?
We'll go Heidi, Emily, Eric, because that's what's on my screen is like a clockwise. So
okay, got it.
I like the same time.
I know I should make flashcards. You just put them out. Early morning or late nights?
Late early mornings.
Always got to be different.
Not an early bird, not a night owl, but mid-morning, I feel like fewer interruptions. I'm more clearly thinking.
Yeah, I'll go with early mornings with the right amount of coffee.
Emily's answer. Yeah.
Perfect. Slack or email?
1, 2, 3. Slack.
Slack. I mean, Slack for speed.
Yeah.
And email, I guess, for structure.
For longer messages.
Yeah, I like the threads aspect, and Teams is actually moving to that anyway. So Teams is going to be Slack in the end. I will make one note about Slack is it could be a compliance nightmare unless you put the right controls in place. So keep that in mind with Slack.
Good call out.
It's my favorite.
All right. One word your team would use to describe you.
My team? Intentional? I don't know. I don't know if I want to expand on that. You might need to ask them.
I'll have to ask them.
I would say optimistic.
I like it.
I don't know. Hopefully they look at me as optimistic. Someone's got to be.
My answer is annoying. Yeah. What about you, Lauren? What's your answer?
I don't even know. What I would say is hopefully fun, but I don't know if that's my answer for everyone or not. So the next question is your go-to stress reset during a rough week.
Oh,
yeah, Heidi, what do you do when you're stressed?
I take my dogs for a walk in the woods and just go outside if I can. Sometimes it's a little cold.
Yeah, I was going to say it depends on the time of year. Right now, probably reading a good book. But in the summer, I like to get outside, whether that be on the lake or taking a walk.
What do you do, Eric?
I like to delete spreadsheets. Yeah. No, probably the gym for me. Definitely the gym.
Sounds great. And then last question, everyone. Podcast, music, or silence when you're working?
Mine's definitely music. I always have on music. So I guess that it just helps me focus.
I need silence unless I'm doing something that I don't really have to think about, and then I can put on some background music. Like if it's something that I don't really have to think about it. And I'm going to be working on it for a little bit. Then I'll put on music with no words, just like instruments. Otherwise, I have to be silent.
Same.
Yeah, I have 3 young kids. There's no silence ever. So mostly music.
Sounds great. This concludes this episode of Seiso Side Up Podcast. Thanks again, Emily and Eric, for joining us. If you like this episode, please hit that like and subscribe button for future episodes. Find this and other episodes where you get your podcasts.